Viewers, welcome to the weekly wrap-up, where we have a look at the most important events of the week. I'm joined right now on the line by Larry Hatheway, Chief Economist at UBS. So first of all, Larry, let's have a look at what happened in Europe this week. Most importantly, the ECB held rates yesterday. The ECB now is sticking to its monetary policies, stating it will remain accommodative as long as needed. Now, what do you think about what Draghi did and did not say yesterday, and how are the markets reacting today as a result?
Well, I think the markets were anticipating a slightly more dovish tone from the ECB. Some folks were even thinking that they might trim interest rates, and the fact that they didn't partly explains the rebound in the euro that's taken place, even continuing a little bit into today. What I think they're struggling with at the ECB is that I think their own forecasts suggest possibly that policy should be eased. But with short-term deposit rates effectively at the zero bound, they have to decide whether it's worthwhile to push them possibly in a negative territory, to narrow their spreads, or to engage in other forms of policy easing. And I don't think that the Council has yet really decided that if they need to make a step, what that step should look like. So in making that comment about sort of doing keeping policy easy for as long as possible, it's getting closer to the language that the Fed used a while back when they talked about an extended period of ease. It should have some impact on long-term bond yields, and thereby obviously provides a degree of accommodation. But in general, I think the ECB is still really sort of struggling to decide what its next step should be, if indeed it determines that it's worth taking.
And the Bank of England also decided to hold rates and stimulus yesterday. Now, what type of impact has this had on the sterling? And of course, do you think George Osborne may change the path for more loosening before the summer?
Well, sterling still sort of is hovering in cable terms around the 150 mark and is a bit weaker against the euro. And I think it reflects in part the idea that most people have that sooner or later the bank is going to have to ease. We certainly believe they'll commit themselves to another 50 billion sterling worth of quantitative easing at some point here in the second quarter, maybe as late as the third quarter. And that reflects economic weakness, both through fiscal austerity in the UK and also the weakness in its major export destination, which is the Eurozone. The funding for lending scheme, well, they're patient with it. They still want to see what happens there, and there may be some seasonal issues with weakness early this year. But in truth, it doesn't seem to yet be doing the things that one had perhaps hoped for out of that particular scheme. And so sterling, I think, is reflecting the idea that policy will have to be eased further, and that currency weakness itself is going to be part of the overall outcome that tries to promote growth in the UK in the back end of 2013 and then looking ahead to next year as well.
Now moving over to Asia, Japan also held interest rates as the Bank of Japan waits to bring in new members who are expecting to implement bolder measures to end 20 years of mild deflation. Now, what are your thoughts on this, Larry?
Well, it was sort of a defiant, sort of outgoing statement and a statement of sort of belief from Shirakawa-san as he prepares now to leave the BOJ and turn the reins over to Kuroda-san, that effectively really cemented sort of his views about monetary policy. But of course, looking forward, things are changing. Kuroda-san is almost surely going to take a more aggressive position with regard to further easing steps by the Bank of Japan, which probably includes further asset purchases. And certainly will countenance, if it happens, weakness in the yen, although the yen is not an explicit instrument of the Bank of Japan. Overall, the economy is sort of, as it were, flattish, and it's not entirely clear that the combination of a weaker yen and a stronger equity market alone will turn economic activity in a sustained fashion higher. But these are steps that I probably, to some extent, are the next ones that Japan has to make, irrespective of how effective they are. And I think the handwriting is on the wall in terms of a monetary policy that will be very accommodative and to some extent will probably also support some degrees of fiscal easing as well.
And finally, looking at Canada. Now the US dollar fell to session lows against the Canadian dollar on Thursday after better than forecast Canadian trade data. The Bank of Canada maintained its dovish stance and left its policy unchanged this week at its rate decision. What did you think about Canada's policy stance and what was said at the meeting?
Well, the Canadian economy is benefiting from a couple of things. Number one is the gentle, but now I think much more durable upturn in the U.S. economy, including in manufacturing, where Eastern Canada is going to be a slightly bigger beneficiary of that. And of course, in Western Canada, the story is really about energy, some other commodities as well, and the changing nature of energy is also something that is helpful. Having said that, of course, world oil prices are on the softer side, but from a point of view of proximity and trade with the United States in the energy space, these are sort of our positive developments. It can explain why a central bank might have a tendency, as you described it, for the Bank of Canada. Generally speaking, though, I would have to say the currency still remains broadly in the range that it's been over the course of the last 18 months or so. Maybe dollar Canada is moving a little bit on the upside, but it seems to me that these are economies that are going to be moving to some extent pretty closely together. And while expectations for the Bank of Canada can change, expectations for the Fed are also going to be shifting in the course of this year as well. So I'm not sure that we should expect necessarily some big movements here in the currency.
Thank you very much, Larry. Well, viewers, do not forget to click back to the website for more interviews and Forex analysis. But for now, enjoy your weekend.